Hello and welcome to another edition of Doctor It Up with Chef Eddie. Today we're going to do an easy, because I spelt the words easy in front of this, Crockpot stew. And there's the meat, of course, stew meat, and beef stock and gravy, potatoes, onion. I use Lipton onion soup mix, salt and pepper, carrots, flour. So these are all the ingredients you're going to do. First you want to flour your meat, and I'd use salt and pepper. And you want to get a nice crust on this meat. Crust is flavor. So be patient and hold off on flipping it over. You can see I have some nice, I'm pointing it out, some nice caramelization on my meat, which is good. And this is an easy way to, that's the way normal people peel carrots is like that. But according to TikTok, it's easier just to go back and forth. And man, it is a time-saving tip. I always use, if you can count my carrots, I always use 7 carrots in my stew. I don't know why. It's just a lucky number for me, so I always use 7 carrots. I cut it on a dais. It kind of looks fancier. And my big fat hands, as you can see, I have a burn from my French toast video I did. But I cut it on a bias to make it look a little fancier. And I cut my 7 carrots, and I cut my potatoes in half. Nothing fancy here, except my big fat fingers. And boy, this is riveting TV, me cutting potatoes. And then the onion, I do kind of a rough chop with it. Again, nothing fancy, just a nice rough chop. Although I do cut it in half. I get rid of all the onion skin and everything. So I cut it like that. A little bit of a chop, because you don't want any big chunks in your stew. Even this is going to cook for, I don't know, about 6 to 8 hours in a crock pot. So usually the onions, you don't even hardly see them anymore because they've disintegrated into the stew. But there's a nice rough chop on my onions. So I've got my onions, my potatoes, and my carrot. So now I take a Lipton onion soup mix. I use a beefy onion, and I add it with a little bit of a flour. It's 1 big heaping teaspoon I put in there, and then I mix it up with some water. I try to add a little water and then stir it up so it doesn't get those lumps in there, and then I kind of whisk it. So there's my gravy mixture. So then I add my meat. I have a little beef stock in the bottom of the crock pot. Add my meat, my caramelized meat, into the beef stew. And then I take my gravy, and I kind of want to thicken it up a little bit. So I take my Lipton onion soup beefy mix with the flour, put that in, a little sprinky dink of S&P, salt and pepper. And then I take a Heinz gravy mix, or you can use McCormick gravy mix. And again, I can make a beef stock if I wanted to out of bones, but this is easy crock pot beef stew. So I add a little beef stock to the empty gravy, and I don't waste anything. I pour that in as well. So now I've got beef stock, the Lipton onion soup mix, and a canned gravy of your choice, McCormick, Heinz, Lipton, whatever you want to use. And I add my carrots. And I'll add my potatoes. Remember, the meat's already in the bottom. And then I'll add my onion right on top. Nothing fancy here. Just all in the big crock pot swimming pool. Don't waste anything. Don't make a mess on the counter, because my wife hates that. I'll add a little garlic and some parsley to my gravy, which is thickening it up very nicely now. As you can see, I added just a knob of butter there as well. But the gravy is getting nice and thick, and then I just pour that right on top of this. And this will sit in a crock pot for about 6 to 8 hours. I did it for about 6 hours. I just wait for the meat to be tender. And because you're cooking in a crock pot, the carrots and the potatoes all get done at the same time. But the meat takes about 6 hours. So there's my nice big hearty beef stew. I give it a little stir, and then I'll put the top on and let this sucker go for about, again, 6 to 8 hours, depending on your crock pot, depending on what I put it on high for 6 hours, and I let it just sit and let the magic happen. Then I make egg noodles with this. So I'll put the egg noodles in the bottom of the pan, and then, excuse me, I will ladle some of this delicious beef stew right on top. See how beautiful that is? And boom, dinner is served. How about that beef stew? And the meat is so tender, and the potatoes are tender, carrots are tender, and see the meat right there is just falling apart. And there it is, easy beef stew in a crock pot from Doctor It Up with Chef Eddie. Operation complete. Bon appetit. Enjoy, everybody.